Nikita Koloff, the Russian nightmare, no, the devil's nightmare, here from It's Time to Man Up, challenging men to step into their true manhood. Your chosen Truth Network podcast is starting in just a few seconds. Enjoy it, share it, but most of all, thank you for listening to the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network.
The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
Welcome to the Masculine Journey. We are glad to have you with us today. We are really, really close to boot camp. Do you realize that?
Yeah.
I realize that. We're right there. We're only, how many eves do you know, Robbie? I didn't ask you ahead of time.
8 eves, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, 4. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Oh, you're right.
Wednesday. So, yeah, 4 eves.
4 eves,
They don't
okay.
start on
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Boot camp, eve.
Yeah.
All right.
We're there.
I was wrong.
And so if you haven't registered, you better go register. Rodney, have you registered?
No.
Okay. Danny, have you registered?
I have registered.
I have.
Yes.
Jim, I know you have.
Have you ever told me to register before?
No, Robbie's registered.
I have.
Yeah. So, I'd say most of us have. Most of us have been obedient.
Most of us have, not Rodney, though.
And that's masculinejourney.org in case you're going, oh, man, I need to go do that.
You definitely need to go register. It's coming up. It's going to be an amazing time. And we're working on a
Let me just throw in one other plug
Please,
about that.
throw in whatever you want.
My brother is going to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. And anybody in my family will tell you, if you think Robbie's funny in the least bit, my brother's twice as funny. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how
and
fun.
2 times 0 is how much?
Yeah.
That's ought times ought. You ought to know that.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
often say Robbie's funny the least bit. So that's right there.
See, my brother got all the funny genes.
No.
And so he's going to be there, my brother Mark. I'm so excited. And his grandson is going to be there too. And Corn. Oh, one of the things you get to do if you come to boot camp is you get to hang out with Corn.
That's a good time.
It is.
That is.
Yeah.
It's real life.
You'll learn some things.
Yeah, in real life.
You'll see some things too.
Yeah. Is he bringing anything with him this time?
Oh, you can count on it.
Oh, yeah.
He's got knapsacks full of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
For the 10.
Oh,
and
yeah?
who knows, the roadkill he may find along the way.
That is awesome. Yeah, you can't miss that. That's pretty cool. So with boot camp coming up, we started last week this small little series of a talk that Andy's doing, and it was kind of his idea, I think. And so we did the first show last week on setting up the core desires of a man's heart, and then we did a battle to fight.
It's the pillars of the core desires.
It is. It's the pillars. But I love the fact that Andy didn't show up.
Yeah,
Well, that's
perfect.
true to masculine journey form right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I think that somewhere in those core desires is be on time and be where you're supposed to be. I think should be a core desire somewhere there. But no, Andy had a conflict today, and he told us about it. So we're covering for him. But Robbie has done this talk a time or two, and so he's really good to carry us along the way. And so we're moving into the adventure to live in this segment, and then in the after hours we'll do a beauty to rescue.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that the idea is we were made in God's image. And I got teased about this last week, but John Eldridge, right, he said about that idea, it's one of the first things that God speaks to man and says, let's make man in our image, male and female. And so he says that's one of the most important things in Scripture you'll ever see. And the reason it is it's so much of an answer to why we are the way we are. Mm-hmm. And as we begin to analyze what really will make you pull over to the side of the road and cry that you didn't see coming is your heart, right? There's things in your heart that you really are more than your brain can get a hold of. Well, the real action biblically happens in your heart. And so by understanding that your heart is made in the image of God's heart is a significant treasure hunt. And so the whole idea of the masculine journey in so many ways is it's a treasure hunt that if we could get a really good look at God's heart, we could get a good look at our own heart. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, we can kind of see, wow, no wonder, right? We talked about last time, a battle to fight, that when you see somebody getting picked on, that it rises something up in you. Or if you watch a movie, that's recreating, D-Day, that something rises up in there that you want to fight for the underdog, and that kind of thing. And so these movie clips or parables, as Jesus was telling, are like a smelling salts that are meant to awaken. And in fact, much of what we're doing the first night at boot camp is let's awaken these desires that God put in us, because that's a big part of figuring out where we are on the journey, is to see where our heart really wants to guide us. And so we've isolated those into these three main categories that we talked about, a battle to fight. So the next one we're going to talk about now is an adventure to live. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have to go very long to see that in the book of Genesis, God put man, right? He made him in the wilderness. And then and when you think about originally man was in the wilderness. And so think about why you love to be outdoors, why you like a mountain scene, why it is that you like to be out in the ocean, the wild, huge waves, all these things we were meant, right? Not to sit in a lazy boy. But, God didn't invent man and put him in the mall. He didn't say, here you go. Here's a nice office cubicle for you, sir. Adam didn't go in a cubicle. He put him in a wild earth because that was what our heart needed in order to test us to see if we had what it took, which, gets you where you want to go. So we're setting that up today.
Yeah, and we're going to get to our first clip, and this is from City Slickers. It's, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, probably at least. I don't know. I'll look it up when we're listening to the clip, maybe. But no, this is from City Slickers. And in the scene, you've got the old rugged cowboy Curly, who's out. He's a trail boss. He's leading these people that come in for an adventure. They're paying for a weekend adventure at what do they call it? It's a camp. I get stuck.
A dude ranch, eh?
Cattle drive, dude ranch. Thank you. I couldn't think of what it was, but
and there's some dudes.
There's some dudes, right? And so these people come in, they pay for this vacation for a couple weeks, and they experience life as a cowboy. And so they're out riding, and there's Mitch and Curly, and I want you to listen to their interaction, and we'll come back and talk about it.
What's so funny?
You city folk, you worry about a lot more.
My wife basically told me she doesn't want me around.
Is she a redhead?
I'm just saying.
How old are you? 38.
39.
Yeah. You all come off here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here will time for you. None of you get it. Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
I like about that clip is, you got Curly that's kind of figured life out. But when I think about Billy Crystal's character, one of the things, I was at a meeting this last week at a church leadership meeting. And the conversation turned to everybody that just about everyone knows in the group is feeling incredibly overwhelmed right now. And overwhelmed, part of that comes from being caught in COVID for so long, right? And we gave up adventure. And when you hear Curly talk about, you spend all year long and then you come up here and in 2 weeks you think you're going to, unwind all the knots that you put in. And that's what we do with our vacation time, right? But God made our heart for so much more, for adventures, not just one a year, not just I'm going to go do this for the weekend. It's in a life of adventure. Yes, we still have to be tent makers like Paul, and we have to do things to earn a living, but our life should be more about the adventure, and that's what God calls us to. And when we don't live in that adventure, you have Mitch and his friends that life just seems so incredibly overwhelming, right? If you feel overwhelmed, get outside. Maybe that's going to help.
Oh, yeah. I go on a walk actually every day if I can, and usually I can. And in that hour, you try to connect with God, because if you think about what God had for almost anybody, you look in the Bible, he took them on adventure. From Abraham, right? Let's go, move out of your country. You take Moses. Oh my goodness, he went on a bit of an adventure. We can find out more on that. And then, Paul, like the poster child. I mean, think about, he was shipwrecked, beaten, this, that, and the other. If God takes you somewhere, he goes on an adventure. But the idea actually behind Kingdom Pursuits originally, when I started that radio show, was I noticed in my own experience on the radio that if you're obedient to God and where he takes you, and he's going to test you, right, to see if you have what it takes, then, oh my goodness, you're going to be in for some adventure. And as I would interview people that wrote a book or they did a movie or whatever it was, next thing they knew, God had in places stretch their comfort zone way, way, way out, because that was what adventure was meant to do, was grow your faith, right? In order to have a testimony, you got to have a test. And if you don't ever get out, in that lazy boy, there ain't a lot of testing going on.
There's not. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the disciples, and when you walk with Jesus, you're on an adventure.
Oh my goodness.
All the things that they saw and they did and were a part of, the storms that come up in life, they saw that, the warfare, they saw that firsthand. They saw legalism firsthand. I mean, they saw all of that. Every bit of that was on the adventure with Jesus. And so why do we think it's going to be any different for us when we go on the adventure with Jesus? Right? We're going to face those same things. And Jesus even says that, right? You're going to have trouble. I mean, that's the paraphrase, obviously, but there's going to be storms in your life, right? Things aren't going to be easy. And being on that adventure with him is risky and all those things, but oh my gosh, it makes you alive.
Now I think about that. That's a really cool picture, Sam, as I pictured more of that. You get to see a woman crack open her vial of oil, right?
Yeah.
I've gotten to see that, right, Danny?
Yeah. I'm thinking you want me to talk about it.
Yeah, well, that would be the whole thing, yeah.
In the last few weeks, I love the story of the lady with the alabaster box, Mary. And her heart was alive. And because she came in to worship Jesus, and she didn't care. She interrupted a men's Bible study or watching ESPN, whatever they were doing. And, she could have been stoned to death. But, God came after her heart. And to me, that alabaster box represents my heart and those things that are precious to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. If you'd like to go to the boot camp, please go to masculinejourney.org to register. It's coming up November 17th through 20th. That's just this next week, people. So go register. We'd love to have you there. God would love to have you there. Register now, masculinejourney.org. I'll talk to you after the break.
How did God remind you who you were at boot camp?
Oh, in so many different ways, from beginning to end. You better expect God to show up, because he's going to show up. If you give him the time, he's going to show up big at this boot camp. It's so important to me that I'm going to drive 550 miles to get there. You can spend 3 days laughing with your brothers, fishing, shooting. It don't get no better than that. And then you're given time to spend time with God, and he will talk to you. With the brothers, friends, the things that you're taught, and the things that you think about. Just amazing experience all the way around.
What we have at our boot camp is something that makes you stronger and gives you the strength to go on your regular walk with God. It's something that will make you be bigger than you were when you got there.
I think sometimes as men, we feel like we're on our own and we've got to do everything ourselves, and the weight of the world is on our shoulders, and it's our job to fix everything and make everything right and have all the answers. And I think when you come here, you just get really honed back in and reminded that God really is for us, that a good father helps you, and a good father makes sure you have all the tools you need, and a good father comes through for you when you need him, and you just feel less alone.
Register today at masculinejourney.org.
Get your motor running, head out on the highway, and whatever comes our way.
So remind me to turn off Jim's mic whenever we start to play a clip a bump that he likes. Well, welcome back to Masculine Journey. Sorry, I forgot what we were doing for a minute. We were just kind of looking at Jim as he was singing along with the clip there. But Steppenwolf, yeah, Born to Be Wild, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about adventure, and you can't listen to that bump if you're of a certain age, at least my age, and maybe older. That you can't hear that and just get your heart pumping, doesn't it, Jim?
It does indeed. And that was part of the beginning of my adventure last week. When you get old enough, it's an adventure just to get on a ship that's a fifth of a mile, between a fifth and a quarter of a mile long, and walk around it. But the first night of karaoke, I sang that to honor a friend that had died since then. And I'll never, because I'd done it for him a long time ago, and I'm just got somebody fired. But that was a wonderful adventure. We went to Haiti and Dominican Republic, and I walked so far, I rubbed 2 toes half off. So
yeah, well, you better take care of that. We need you at boot camp. So, we are talking about adventure. And so that was an adventure that you were on. And so we are talking about the adventure of boot camp, what's coming up next week. We want you to be there. It's going to be an amazing time. No pressure. Just know that God has some pretty amazing things for you. We have some more clips on adventure. Robbie, you got one. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Cool Running. It's from that movie, Cool Running, which was a Jamaican bobsled team. And there's some things about that. I mean, it seems self-explanatory that it's going to be an adventure if you're living in Jamaica and you want to learn how to be a bobsledder. But, it got John Candy played this amazing coach that actually had a moral failure that had led to him, being disgraced. And he, it was his dream, obviously, to be reinstated. And so he got a chance through the Jamaican bobsled team. And then they're going on something that they never thought they would ever be capable of, which, again, is going to show them being tested. But there's one part of this clip that I want you to hear. It's kind of tucked in near the end, where you hear the lead driver of the Jamaican bobsled team says, "How will I know when I'm enough?" Which, that's so much the question so many of us have is, do I have what it takes and whatever? And so adventures, as you are obedient to God and you go, and what the answer John Candy as a coach says to him is, you'll know when you cross the finish line. And so go ahead and play the clip, but listen to that. How will I know when I'm enough?
Always remember, your bones will not break in a bobsled. No. They shatter. So, who wants in?
We're looking for a sponsor for the first Jamaican bobsled team.
Their dream was to compete in the Olympics. But they chose a sport they knew nothing about.
Great. Very good.
In a climate they had never been. This is the true story of 4 unlikely athletes.
How about I beat your butt right now?
How about I draw a line down the middle of your head so it looks like a butt?
Who weren't prepared for what they were about to face.
Why don't you put some training wheels on that sled?
Leave the bobsledding to the real man.
You have no business here, Jamaica.
People are always afraid of what's different.
Now! Good!
But they found in each other
Do you really expect these Jamaicans to qualify?
the courage to give it their all.
Not only are they going to qualify, they're going to turn some heads doing it.
I see pride. I see power.
And they took the whole world along for the ride.
Is to follow your dreams. Follow your dreams.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
I am feeling very Olympic today.
a story for anyone who dares to stand out in a crowd.
I didn't come up here to forget who I am and where I come from.
And everyone with the courage
Cool running! Yes!
to stand up for their dreams.
How will I know if I'm enough? When you cross that finish line.
Where did these guys come from?
Jamaica! You'll know.
Cool Runnings.
So what are we going to name this sled? Tallulah. Tallulah.
That's my mother's name.
Tallulah. I like it.
So yes, at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, okay? At the end of the movie, they finally do make a name for themselves, and it looks like they actually have a chance to finish, in the top 3 or something. But unfortunately, due to the fact that their sled was, secondhand, et cetera, the sled falls apart in the last curve and crashes. No fault of the team. They were having an amazing run. But what they did, rather than quit, is they, lifted up the sled and they marched across the finish line to the crowd just absolutely cheering, with the point being that it wasn't about winning, right? It was about finding out, do you have what it takes? And it's such a beautiful picture of what adventure was meant to be. And so as, I've had a chance to do this talk, I've had a chance to really think about those adventures that you uniquely have always wanted to do, right? You since you're a kid, you wanted to do it, and those things that God has put there, because his heart is full of adventure. God's a risky God. He gave you free will after all, So, one of the things that he put in my heart was I wanted to sail from Florida to the Bahamas. In order to do that, I needed to get my license on a bigger sailboat, and so I had an opportunity to go rent and get my license for a bigger sailboat in Tampa one time, and my daughter was about 14. And so we take this sailboat out into the Tampa Bay, and we go under the big bridge, and we're out in the ocean and sailing, and I'm having the time of my life. My daughter was bored to tears. She was like, "Why did you put me on, this horrible thing?" It was just like, how could you do this? My wife and I, we were having a good time. Well, as we're coming back in the last day, we came under the bridge, and we got a radio call that's saying there's a big storm coming up. You've got to come in right now, because the way the bay is, that it gets really rough. And it's very narrow where a sailboat with a big keel can go. You got to be in the channel, because if you send a sailboat aground, right, in a storm, it flipped it over and you're in bad trouble. So you've got to make it in the channel, and the storm gets big, you can't find the buoys. So we're coming in the channel and everything looks beautiful, but the second we crossed under the bridge, I don't know how to put it other than all hell broke loose. It just did. And there was lightning and there was thunder and huge waves and wind and rain, and it's pouring down, and these two waves come over the bow of the sailboat where my wife and my daughter were, with their feet dangling like you would, and I'm trying to get the sails down because, you don't, this is like the weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed, and I was the fearless crew at this point in time, and I was a hero of one, and my wife doesn't swim. And she didn't have a life preserver on. This wave comes crashing across the bow, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get her back into the boat. I get on a life preserver, and my daughter was like, we're going to die. She said, should I call my friends and tell them I'll never see them again? Because, when you see a wave come over the bow, like one of these big waves, and the thing, sailboats are self-bailing, so it didn't have me as freaked out as it certainly did my family as far as the wave. What freaked me out is I didn't know I was going to find the buoy, because I couldn't see over the waves to see where the buoy was, and the boat was going from left to right, that I couldn't see the compass to see what heading it was on. So I actually got everybody in life preserver, sent my wife and daughter back out on the bow so that they could try to see the buoys. I say all this to say that when we got home, like obviously we did, I'm here to tell you the story. I didn't lose either of my kids, my wife or anything. The most boring time of her life turned into like she'll never forget this story. Like, I'll never forget the time that we were in this, and the whole thing seemed like the worst part of the trip would be this horrible storm, but it was the best part of this trip because we all found out, right, that we had what it took. It was one of those things. It was a faith stretcher.
Thanks, Robbie. Andy likes to bring up the point on adventure that there's three different types of adventures that God will take you on, and they're all important for different reasons. You have casual adventures. It's like when you go out fishing, hunting, those types of things that you enjoy doing, right? That's an adventure with God out in nature, and it has its place and it's important. It's not trivial, right? And so it's important to have those. There's also critical adventures, and that's like my work and how I provide for my family, or maybe it's hunting to get food, for the family because that's the only thing they're going to have to eat. That becomes from casual to critical, right? And then there's crucial adventures, and that's really your ministry, your calling kind of thing, and God will take you on all those. and he does continuously, right? And sometimes what we first lose sight of is the casual adventures, and we kind of let those go. I don't have time to really go fishing this weekend. I don't have time to do that. Or, there's my great second nephew's birthday party I got to go to, kind of thing, and I can't go do anything. Right. And then all of a sudden we start to lose that taste of adventure, and then it creeps into the other aspects of our life. Right. And all of a sudden that work that was exciting and invigorating becomes overwhelming and tiring. Right. And I can't even think about my calling or what God has for me because I can't get out of all the other stuff I have to do. And so when you start to let those adventures slide, you really start to risk everything that makes your heart really come alive in that area. Right. And so I know that there's a lot of people who say, well, that's just really silly that you want to go out and do these things. Well, yeah, you can't go ignore your family. I'm not saying that, but you got to have some time for you, or it will be a soul-killing experience.
I think the difference is in Colossians 3, where it says, whatever you do in word and deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God, to the Father through him. And what that means to me is that when I'm engaged with God, everything is an adventure. It flips the tables, because work doesn't become as mundane when I know God and I have left the house on an adventure that day, whatever I'm doing. And so I think that's the difference is, all of a sudden you become alive, you get your heart back, and you are engaged in life because, Jesus is on board.
Thank you, Danny. We have an adventure for you coming up for the boot camp. It's coming up next weekend. All you need to do is go register at masculinejourney.org. If you need help financially, please reach out to us. We'll find a way to get you there. If you're available and want to come, we will help you get there and get in there. Get into the camp. masculinejourney.org. We're going to go over and talk about the Beauty to Rescue next, and that's going to be on the after hours. And so what you would do is you go to your favorite podcast location, stream it on there, download it. You can listen to Beauty to Rescue, and please join us next week. And we'll be talking about the boot camp. That will be live from boot camp next week. Don't miss that one.
This is the Truth Network.